Folks, the Iran war is not over, and it is unfortunately looking like there will be another country on the hit list for America soon. Donald Trump has basically just come out and said that he wants to be the person to take Cuba. He wants to take over Cuba. He wants to liberate the country. And this has basically just led to a whole bunch of drama, and a lot of people are thinking that this is the next move for America to basically potentially invade Cuba, occupy Cuba, and it's going to be another long, expensive, potential forever war if we're not careful, okay? So this is pretty terrifying. America's had issues with Cuba for decades. The fear of communism in Cuba, Russia wanting to put missiles there, the Cuban Missile Crisis, it threatened the integrity of America to think that nuclear weapons or any kind of missiles could be stationed so close to the country. So Trump is thinking it might be time. It might be time to just take down Cuba, take it down a peg, take it over. Since things are going so well in Iran, that could be the move. So here's what he said. I'm going to break down to you some of the history as to why America deciding they want to take over Cuba might not be the best thing since sliced bread or the Iran assassinations of the leaders.
I do believe I'll be having the honor of taking Cuba. That'd be good honor. It's a big honor.
Taking Cuba.
Taking Cuba in some form, yeah. Taking Cuba. I mean, whether I free it, take it, I think I could do anything I want with it. You want to know the truth? They're a very weakened nation.
You can grab Cuba. You know what I'm saying? You can do whatever you want to it. You know, when you're a star, when you're the president, you can just take it, man. You can just take that Cuba.
They were for a long time. Very violent leaders. Castro was a very violent leader. His brother's a very violent leader, extremely violent. That's how they governed. They governed with violence. But a lot of people would like to go back.
Is Cuba, whatever you do with the military there, it seems like something, will that look more like Iran or Venezuela?
Can't tell you that. I can tell you that they're talking to us. It's a failed nation. They have no money. They have no oil. They have no nothing. They have nice land. They have nice landscape, you know. It's a beautiful island. I do believe I'll be.
So he says he believes he'll have the honor of taking Cuba. He's going to just grab Cuba and just take it for himself. Now, this is all coming at an interesting time for Cuba because Cuba has been facing a devastating island-wide blackout. And some people are wondering whether America had something to do with this or whether this is just the perfect opportunity for Trump and the Americans to just come in and just grab the country.
Let's take a look at Havana this hour. Officials reporting an island-wide blackout today, the third major blackout in Cuba over the last 4 months. The country says it's being hit hard by a U.S. energy blockade, and the Trump administration says that won't end until its demands are met. Well, Mira Baines is in for Sarah Galashan this week. And what's the latest from Cuba?
Well, this collapse of Cuba's electrical grid is just the latest in an ongoing energy crisis in the country. The latest information that we have is that the energy ministry in Cuba says it is getting microsystems up in parts of the country. So some regions are regaining power. But this is essentially the third major blackout in Cuba in the last 4 months. Now, Cuba has blamed the U.S. U.S. President Donald Trump had warned back in January that any country that would be selling or providing oil would be subject to U.S. tariffs. Now, the latest shipments of oil were back in January and February. So that was Mexico that was providing oil. And then it was Jamaica who was sending cooking oil to Cuba, which is, of course, very essential. Venezuela, Cuba's main supplier, has not sent fuel this year for.
So what just happened to Venezuela, right? Trump went over there, grabbed up the president. Now Cuba's not getting what they need. Complete blackout. Traffic lights aren't even working. This is outrageous. They're getting cooking oil from Jamaica, all right? The yard men lending out a little cooking oil so these men can cook up. What the hell is going on?
For obvious reasons. And last Friday, there was a big development. Cuba's president said that Cuban officials were talking to the U.S. So this was a really big development last week. And that brings us to today. And U.S. Donald Trump made this eyebrow-raising comment.
All my life I've been hearing about the United States and Cuba. When will the United States do it? I do believe I'll be having the honor of taking Cuba. That'd be good honor. It's a big honor.
Taking Cuba.
taking Cuba in some form, yeah. Taking Cuba. I mean, whether I free it, take it, I think I could do anything I want with it. You want to know the truth?
It's insane.
And the New York Times is reporting that the Trump administration is seeking to push Cuba's president, Miguel Diaz-Canel, from power. So we're watching the latest there.
That Trump would be so casual in talking about taking over a country, I guess we should be used to it by now, but it still is jarring. So how are Cubans responding to all of this?
Yeah, and that's always the question. How are people on the ground feeling? And over the weekend, there were protests in Cuba. We do have footage from Saturday. People took to the streets and rallied. This footage has been verified. The Communist Party building was ransacked, and discontent is ramping up there. And I should say that protests in Cuba are rare. So this is a significant development. And all these energy issues that we've been talking about have resulted in the price of food going up, the price of fuel going up, also tens of thousands of surgeries being canceled, and tourism being affected as well. And so there's no way for people to even refrigerate their food. So they're relying on things like solar power. And so Cuba has said that it is looking at a plan to allow Cuban nationals who live in other countries to invest in companies in Cuba. But some critics say this is too little too late.
I don't know if I'd be investing my money in Cuba right now, unless, of course, I can invest in the building of a new Trump hotel and resort and golf course there. Now, simultaneously, while all this is going on, okay, it's not a great look when the director of National Counterterrorism Center, Joe Kent, has just announced he would be resigning. He doesn't want any parts of what's going on anymore, okay? He basically posted this. So after much reflection, I've decided to resign from my position as director of the National Counterterrorism Center effective today. I cannot in good conscience support the ongoing war in Iran. Iran posed no imminent threat to our nation, and it's clear we started this war due to pressure from Israel and its powerful lobby. It's been an honor serving under the President of the United States and Tulsi Gabbard, leading the professionals at the National Counterterrorism Center. Do we need national counterterrorism centers? Do we need this? Yeah, I think we might need this, actually. We might need to replace this guy. Now, it's interesting that he actually did give a lot of love to Trump in this statement. He said, I support the values and the foreign policies you campaigned on in 2016, 20, and 24, which you enacted in your first term. Until June of 2025, you understood that the wars in the Middle East were a trap that robbed America of the precious lives of our patriots and depleted the wealth and prosperity of our nation. And he bigged him up for some of the hits that some of the drills that he went on in the previous administration. He said, in your first administration, you understood better than any modern president how to decisively apply military power without getting us drawn into never-ending wars. You demonstrated this by killing Qasem Soleimani and defeating ISIS. Early in this administration, high-ranking Israeli officials and influential members of the American media deployed a misinformation campaign that wholly undermined your America First platform and sowed pro-war sentiments to encourage a war with Iran. This echo chamber was used to deceive you into believing Iran posed an imminent threat to the US and that you should strike now. There was no clear path to a swift victory. This was a lie. Okay, that he believed there was a clear path. That was a lie. And it's the same tactic the Israelis have used to draw us into the disastrous Iraq war. I don't think that that's what happened, but maybe if we go back in history, I'm pretty sure that was other stuff that cost our nation the lives of thousands of our best men and women. We can't make this mistake again. He said, as a veteran who deployed to combat 11 times and a Gold Star husband who lost my beloved wife Shannon in a war manufactured by Israel. That's really sad. I cannot support sending the next generation off to fight and die in a war that serves no benefit to the American people nor justifies the cost of American lives. He asked Trump to reflect on what you're doing in Iran, who you're doing it for. The time for bold action is now. You can reverse course and chart a new path for our nation, or you can allow us to slip further into decline and chaos. You hold the cards. He likes holding the cards. He would react to this resignation, and it didn't really seem like it affected him.
Your director of national counterterrorism, Joe Kent, he just resigned today. He said he can't support your conflict with Iran. What's your reaction to that? And did you?
Well, I read his statement. I always thought he was a nice guy, but I always thought he was weak on security, very weak on security. I didn't know him well, but I thought he seemed like a pretty nice guy. But when I read his statement, I realized that it's a good thing that he's out, because he said that Iran was not a threat. Iran was a threat. Every country realized what a threat Iran was. The question is whether or not they wanted to do something about it.
So he's standing on that Iran was that Iran was a threat, okay? And Joe Kent, he does actually have quite a complex and controversial history in Washington. You know, it's not the first time that he has ruffled a few feathers, let's say, okay? This is an analysis on why he quit. And basically, in this video, they'll explain how he's kind of been involved in a few high-profile little kerfuffles
This
over the
is
years.
a bombshell resignation letter. It appears to undermine Trump's central case for war, and the president's not happy.
I always thought he was weak on security.
The letter adds weight to the British and European reluctance to get involved, but it is a letter that demands context too, because of who wrote it. First, the key sentence. 8 words: Iran posed no imminent threat to our nation. So who wrote the letter? Well, Joe Kent is, or was, the director of the National Counter-Terrorism Center, a key US government department. He was appointed by President Trump last year. A former soldier, he served in Afghanistan and Iraq, and was then a CIA operative. His first wife, also a soldier, was killed in an ISIS bombing in Syria in 2019. Now, politically, Kent is the personification of Trump's core America First platform. He's mega MAGA. He's against American intervention overseas. He's against the US support for Ukraine. His time in the military and personal tragedy formed his views on forever wars. He's also been tied to white supremacist groups. His appointment as director of the National Counterterrorism Center was controversial among critics of Trump, of course. So that's the context. And those same Trump critics now find themselves aligned with him over the Iran war. So let's get into the key parts of the letter. First, this. He wrote, in June of 2025, Trump understood that the wars in the Middle East were a trap that robbed America of the precious lives of our patriots. Then, he claimed, Trump was drawn into Iran by Israel. Early in this administration, high-ranking Israeli officials and influential members of the American media deployed a misinformation campaign that wholly undermined your America First platform and sowed pro-war sentiments to encourage a war with Iran. Then this. This echo chamber was used to deceive you into believing that Iran posed an imminent threat to the United States. And he said his first wife was killed in a war manufactured by Israel. She was in fact killed by an ISIS bomb. He clearly holds skeptical views of Israel, to say the very least. But does all this context invalidate his key point that Iran posed no imminent threat? That's the story here. Was there a threat, and how imminent was it?
You would have had a nuclear war in the Middle East and maybe beyond. I think it would have hit Europe.
That was the president this week. The problem is there has been no evidence produced to back up that claim. One final thought to all this, bringing it back to President Trump. Joe Kent, remember, was MAGA to his core with his views. And so I do think this letter should be an alarm bell for the president. The people who put him in the White House are uneasy, to say the least.
So he was MAGA to his core. He did have some very controversial opinions and plans. So he actually had previously been planning to directly probe into the mysterious death / assassination / murder of our guy Charlie Kirk. All right, shout out to the Wayback Machine, but we haven't got the bread for them today. But basically, this says officials' access to FBI files in Charlie Kirk case drew pushback. An inquiry by Joe Kent, leading the National Counterterrorism Center, is said to have alarmed Kash Patel, the FBI director. So Joe Kent was having a little beef with Kash Patel at the FBI because he wanted to know what was going on with Charlie Kirk's murder. The head of the National Counterterrorism Center examined FBI files in the last several weeks to investigate whether the man charged with assassinating Charlie Kirk had support from someone else, a foreign power or another entity, Could be Iran. According to multiple people with knowledge of the matter, the inquiry by Joe Kent, the director of Counterterrorism Center, alarmed Kash Patel, the director of the FBI. Mr. Patel and other senior officials believe Mr. Kent was overstepping, treading on FBI responsibilities, and potentially interfering with the investigation and prosecution of the suspect Tyler Robinson. Joe Kent wanted to look into it and see whether there was some kind of more wider-reaching, complicated terrorist undertone to this by potentially a foreign nation. FBI's Kash Patel said, hell no, we're just going to put it all on Tyler Robinson. No more questions to be asked here. That's an interesting way of looking at it. Supporters of Mr. Kent said he was doing his job, running down leads and making sure no foreign or domestic groups were linked to Mr. Kirk's death. Mr. Robinson was accused of killing Mr. Kirk last month as the conservative activist made an appearance at a college campus in Utah, one of many where he would, one student at a time, debate contentious topics. State prosecutors in Utah have charged Mr. Robinson with 7 counts, including felony aggravated murder. The Senate confirmed Mr. Kent as the director of Counterterrorism Center in July. He's one of the closest advisors to Tulsi Gabbard, the director of National Intelligence, and shares her focus on traditional terrorism groups as well as drug cartels, which he argues is a grave threat to the US. Mr. Patel was troubled that Mr. Kent had gone through FBI material related to the case, according to people with knowledgeable on the matter. Mr. Kent's efforts were a topic at a White House meeting that included Mr. Patel, Mr. Kent, and his direct superior, Miss Gabbard, top Justice Department officials, Vice President J.D. Vance, and the White House Chief of Staff, Susie Wiles, were also there, according to several people who spoke to the New York Times about the matter. So it was a tense meet-up, and they weren't feeling that he was thinking that terrorism might have been involved in the Charlie Kirk hit. The people interviewed by the Times got anonymity to speak frankly about the internal dynamics in the Trump administration. The FBI and the Justice Department generally keep tight control over evidence in criminal cases, particularly when they're preparing for a trial in which government documents may have to be turned over to the defense and could be used to poke holes in the prosecution's case. While Mr. Robinson is currently facing only state charges, some admin officials were concerned that Mr. Kent's efforts could provide fodder to defense lawyers who could use this notion that more than one person was involved in Mr. Kirk's killing to raise reasonable doubt in the minds of jurors, said those aware of the matter. Since Mr. Kirk's death, some White House officials have pressed for sweeping federal investigations of liberal groups and donors, and some of the president's allies outside the administration are convinced that the killing is part of a broader plot. Despite a lack of evidence that's been presented to support that, officials involved in the arrest say they believe Mr. Robinson acted alone. The lone gunman, we've heard that before. Mr. Kent told administration officials that a lower-level FBI official had granted him access to the agency's files, which Mr. Patel was said not to be aware of, according to some people interviewed. In response to the questions from the Times, Mr. Patel and Ms. Gabbard released a joint statement that didn't address the debate over Mr. Kent's inquiry and sought to portray a unified front. They said the FBI and intelligence community under direction of President Trump will leave no stone unturned in the investigation of the assassination of our friend Charlie Kirk. But multiple people have said tensions over Mr. Kent's work have persisted for some time and were part of a broader set of issues between Ms. Gabbard's office and the other administration's agencies. The meeting that Mr. Kent attended at the White House was one of 2 intended to ameliorate tensions between the FBI and Ms. Gabbard's office. The people briefed would explain that. The earlier one, which focused on multiple issues, including the killing of Mr. Kirk, was so tense that little was accomplished. It was a tense meeting. It was potentially an argument. It says, in the hours after Mr. Kirk's killing, before Mr. Robinson was identified as the suspect, officials across American intelligence agencies were investigating whether any foreign government was involved in a plot to kill Mr. Kirk. Some officials inside the government raised questions about the assassin's abilities and training after security footage was released of him jumping from a high ledge. Early in the investigation, evidence was collected that contained words often associated with anti-fascist writing, namely the inscriptions on bullets found in the rifle that killed Mr. Kirk. In the charging documents, prosecutors included a text message from Mr. Robinson that claimed the inscriptions were mostly a big internet meme. The Counterterrorism Center gathered material from intelligence agencies about a potential foreign ties to Mr. Robinson and has so far looked at foreign funding of people who identify with the far left movement known as Antifa. Trump said Mr. Robinson was radicalized by the left, though the president has not directly tied him to Antifa. And after Kirk died, Trump said that he was designating Antifa as a terrorist organization. Now, it's not such a bad idea, but is that Joe Kent's problem if Antifa is a domestic terrorism organization, or is he thinking that someone from abroad somewhere, Iran, was putting the battery in his back? Because they tried to kill Trump a few times. Now, it says Antifa is a term for a sometimes violent protest culture of far-left activists, but it's not an actual organization. Several critics have questioned what legal criteria the president is using to make such a designation about a diffuse movement with no clear leader. But under Mr. Kent, the National Counterterrorism Center has taken a higher profile than in years past, issuing warnings about potential terrorist attacks and highlighting work to aid Mexico in hunting the leaders of drug cartels. They caught a whole lot of bodies doing that. But critics of Mr. Kent's work says he's pushing his center into areas that should be left to the FBI or the CIA. They thought he was overstepping his boundaries, but it does make you wonder, are they trying to just make their work easier for themselves? Now, Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt would quickly publish an official statement that rejected Kent's claims in his recent statement, where he said that Iran didn't pose a threat. She was not feeling it, right? And she basically said it was all cap. She said, there's many false claims in this letter, but let me address one specifically, that Iran posed no imminent threat to our nation. This is the same false claim that Democrats and in some of the liberal media have been repeating over and over. As President Trump has clearly and explicitly stated, he has strong and compelling evidence that Iran was going to attack the US first. This evidence was compiled from many sources and factors, and President Trump would never make the decision to deploy military assets against a foreign adversary in a vacuum. Iran is the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism. The Iranian regime is evil. It proudly killed Americans, waged war against our country, and openly threatened us all the way up to the launch of Operation Epic Fury. Iran was aggressively expanding their short-range ballistic missiles to combine with their naval assets to give them immunity, meaning they would have a degree of capabilities that would give them immunity to hold us and the rest of the world hostage. It says basically that they were trying to get weapons that could hit America from the submarines, could have been nuclear weapons, and they could basically destroy any country they want. They weren't trying to let that happen. She said the regime aimed to use those ballistic missiles as a shield to continue achieving their ultimate goal, nuclear weapons. The president, through his top negotiators, gave the regime every single possible opportunity to abandon this unacceptable course by permanently giving up their nuclear ambitions in exchange for sanctions relief, free nuclear fuel, and potential economic partnerships with our country. But they would not say yes to peace because obtaining nuclear weapons was their fundamental goal. President Trump ultimately made the determination that a joint attack with Israel would greatly reduce the risk to American lives that would come from a first strike by the terrorist Iranian regime and address this imminent threat to America's national security interests. All of this led to President Trump arriving at the determination that this military operation was necessary for U.S. national security, which is why he launched the massively successful Operation Epic Fury. The commander-in-chief determines what does and does not constitute a threat because he is the one constitutionally empowered to do so, and because the American people went to the ballot box and entrusted him and him alone to make such final judgments. And finally, the absurd allegation that President Trump made this decision based on the influence of others, Israel, even foreign countries, Israel, is both insulting and laughable. Ha ha ha. President Trump has been remarkably consistent and has said for decades Iran can never possess a nuclear weapon. As someone who actually witnesses Trump's decision-making process on a daily basis, I can attest to the fact he's always looking to do what's best in the best interests of the United States of America, period. America first, period. That's what she said. Now, a lot of people come out and give their opinions on this situation, and it does color things in an interesting way when you consider that Trump's basically ready to go balls deep on Cuba. The Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson would weigh in on this fallout himself and give his thoughts too.
Proposition at the end is clearly wrong. I'm on the Gang of Eight. I got all the briefings. We all understood there was clearly an imminent threat, that Iran was very close to the enrichment of nuclear capability, and they were building missiles at a pace that no one in the region could keep up with. They were far outpacing our allies and friends and us in our defense capability because we had personnel, installations, members of the armed services and civilians in the region. Iran was building up ballistic missiles at such a rapid pace, and we knew that their plan was to fire them upon Americans. The commander-in-chief and his administration had a very difficult decision to make. I don't know where Joe Kent is getting his information, but he wasn't in those briefings, clearly, because the Secretary of State, the Secretary of War, and everyone, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Kane, they had exquisite intelligence, and we understood that this was a serious moment for us. Had the president waited, I am personally convinced that we would have mass casualties of Americans, service members and others, and our installations would have been dramatically damaged. And so we had to, the president felt that he had to strike first to prevent those mass casualties. That's a summary. I can't tell you the classified part, but that's a summary that's made public, and it's accurate. Yeah, monitor.
So ever since Joe Kent came out with this and kind of talked down on the president, everybody's been rallying around the administration. Fox News, obviously, pretty supportive to the administration. They went on the offensive, and they would directly accuse Joe Kent of being cut out for leaking classified information and basically not being trustworthy. So this is what they said about him here.
Based on the influence of others, even foreign countries, is both insulting and laughable. Now, our own Aisha Hasni reporting that on background to a senior administration official says that Joe Kent was cut out of POTUS intelligence briefings months ago due to allegations of suspected leaks, and that he has not been a part of any Iran planning discussions or briefings at all, which sort of posed the disconnect addressed earlier this morning by the administration, saying that he wasn't privy to the classified information that indeed underscores and proves, provides the evidence that Iran was nuclear empowered or about to be. And final quick point that I've referenced Joe Kent's testimony on the Hill many times in 2025 of the 18,000 known terrorists that came through the southern border under the Biden administration's watch in the prior 4 years.
We are still dealing with today, and we will get to that in just a moment. Actually, you know, Harris, he's also sitting there with Ireland. It's a close ally of the United States, and he called out Europe, and he called them out domestically. And he said, if you don't deal with it.
So, yeah, they're kind of rallying around the administration as far as Fox News, and they're basically saying that, look, Joe Kent, he was removed from briefings, all right? He was cut out of things because they thought he might have been leaking. They didn't want to have him part of anything going on with Iran. So he must have missed the memo on the imminent threat, all right? That's at least what they want you to think. But all of this news, it's not swaying Trump's base, okay? The war is starting to put some voters off. Some people are upset, but a lot of people are still riding with Trump. And we saw an interesting report that basically would see people interviewing some voters and seeing how they feel about everything that's going on.
Let's roll the tape.
The decision to strike Iran.
It was a great decision. I think somebody else should have done it a couple of years ago, last 3 other presidents.
Are you willing to pay higher prices at the pump if that's the cost?
Yeah, I'm willing to pay a little more, yeah.
What do you think about the war?
I think he's doing the right thing. You know, in the long run, it's going to help us out because if they get nuclear weapons, we might not even be here in a couple of years. So I think he's doing a good job.
Is it worth the rise in the price of gas?
Oh, yeah, I think so.
What do you think about the U.S. decision to go into Iran?
I think we got to do what we got to do to keep this country safe. So, and if it means paying a little bit more in gas right now to keep everybody safe, then that's what we got to do. And eventually they'll come back down.
And Kelly, most of the people we talked to were supportive of the war and willing to pay the higher gas prices for the war. Some of them because they believe in the goals of the war, others because they trust President Trump. But not everybody felt that way, and not everybody's excited about Trump here, and not everybody's planning to vote for Republicans in the midterms who supported Trump. Let's take a listen to one more woman who we spoke with. If you could say something to President Trump and he was going to hear you right now, what would it be?
You are a worthless pile of
And you voted for him how many times?
3 times. That was my bad. Apparently, I'm an idiot.
So look, not everyone's loving it. Some people are loving it, all right? She feels like a big old dummy, all right, for what's happening. She voted for him 3 times. But I do, look, I'm not a Trumper, okay? I'm not a Trump supporter. I'm not a Trump hater. I'm not even from America. We got our own problems going on here in England. But I would say that, to be completely honest with you guys, there's definitely a case to be made for putting the screws on Iran. I think this has maybe went a little bit too far too fast. I think maybe if Israel were the ones pulling the strings, that's probably not great for American sovereignty. But Trump is sticking to his guns, basically saying there was an imminent threat. He took it out. He's doing what should have been done years ago. And if they can manage to stabilize this situation, maybe get a pro-American leadership into Iran, which is a long shot right now, but maybe, maybe if that gay leader, doesn't make it, they might find someone else even more liberalized that might want to accept what America's doing in the region. But the idea that Trump might go take Cuba is pretty crazy. I mean, on the one hand, it's like, bro, can we just stop the imperialism for a minute? But on the other hand, it's kind of like, well, look, America's the biggest, toughest guys. They got the best geography. They got the best land, best resources. If Trump's going to swing his dick, might as well just get strategic with it. If Cuba's going to be good strategically, it's going to stop this World War III situation where Russia might want to be able to, have some pull in South America. Hey, maybe it's not going to be so bad. Let me know what you guys think. Okay, I'm still educating myself on this level of politics. All right, we're going to a level of politics that I didn't even know was possible, but I am finding it really interesting. This is definitely more complicated and more nuanced than covering the local gang wars, but at the same time, I do feel like this affects everybody way more than the war in Iran is definitely a bigger deal than the war in Chicago. Let's just put it that way. So let me know what you thought of that one. I'm going to make a few more videos today on some political stuff. I've got an Israel video that's coming up. I've also got a video on that UFO general that went missing, which I know you guys were quite interested in. So I'll give you a very interesting update on that one shortly. But thank you for watching this video. Thank you to everyone that tapped in with the live stream yesterday. I'm going to go live again just sporadically. I thought it was quite fun to talk to you guys directly, so that was enjoyable for me. But until next time, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Thank you for watching. I'm out, gang. Peace.